All right, so let's talk about one other application where you can see NPIV come in handy today. I don't know if everybody remembers, but a few years back, NPIV was the hottest thing going. Actually, VMware came up with this idea to use NPIV in a virtual machine environment. So let's look at VMware as our specific example. So today, if you're looking at a VMware server, you have multiple virtual machines or hosts or guest operating systems. And they basically, the way in this environment works, they all talk through a hypervisor to an HBA. This HBA uses the bandwidth to talk to the SAN, and then on the other side of the SAN is where the storage pool exists. We call it a storage pool because in this type of environment, it could be a giant pool or volume of storage. And we'll call this one 2 terabytes. That's a big LUN. But the idea behind it is now I can deploy virtual machines on this physical server at will. It takes less than 15 minutes. I have customers who are very excited about doing this. It's very easy to do. However, if there's a problem somewhere in this part, they can't track it. They have no idea what the problem is. So for example, if this is an application server A, and he's got some kind of a performance problem, and my administrator talks to my storage guy and he says, I got a problem, I'm running really slow, what's going on? The storage guy can say, I gave you the 2 terabyte LUN, but I don't know what you're doing with it. I can't tell you. Everything that I can see looks good to me. So I'm not sure what's going on. This is where NPIV comes in handy. So if we look at what NPIV could do, now remember what I said before. If I just go to you a quick outline here, if I look at a port on an HBA, a physical port, NPIV will give you the ability to do virtual ports or V ports on that same physical port. It looks like a regular worldwide port name as far as the SAN is concerned. They log in just like a regular worldwide port name would on a regular SAN. So what I do is I take those virtual ports and I assign them to each virtual machine. So let's call this virtual machine SA. I'm going to give him a worldwide port name and it'll call it SA at the end. What happens on this side is now I can give him real storage. I can say, okay, to SA I'm going to give this LUN, and I'm going to call him T1. And now I can zone it. So my zone could be SA, T1, and now my data flow goes like this through the fabric. So if there's a problem now in SA, my administrator can call my storage guy up and he can go right to a LUN and say, yep, you either have a problem or you don't have a problem. So let's take this a step further. This is where we come in. Say, for example, I want to put Exchange up there. I put Exchange in this virtual environment, and it doesn't run so well anymore. It used to run pretty good while it was separate over here by itself, but I put it up here now in a virtualized environment. When I do that, all these other guys are vying for the same HBA bandwidth at the same time. So if I have, even if I do have NPIV working here, and I have multiple LUNs out here all talking to these virtual machines, I could say, hey, SA is working here, but this still looks pretty good. There's nothing going on down here that my storage guy says, everything looks good, I don't know where your problem is. I'll tell you what your problem is. All these other guys, they want the same bandwidth here. When we do our quality of service using this NPIV technology, what I would do in my fabric, and don't forget, I don't know if I mentioned this, but our quality of service is a fabric service. It's done here in the SAN. So if I say quality of service, turn it on to high on SA T1 zone, this is now turned on here in the fabric. When you have a Brocade fabric attached to a Brocade HBA, I turn on quality of service on this HBA. I give it this guy's worldwide port name, this guy's worldwide port name, source to destination, and now I do this. I take this thing, I isolate that data flow from that virtual machine through this HBA, out through the SAN, right to the target port. I isolated it and I prioritized it with high. What's the difference and where does that make any sense? Before, you would never put this Exchange server on this virtual machine. No one usually puts anything that's a high availability application or a critical application out on a virtual machine environment because of this alone. Brocade is the only company using this technology, the virtual channel technology, that can guarantee I isolate your data flow from point A through the fabric to point B and prioritize it without anybody else interfering with it. This way, you definitely get a good return on your investment, because now I can take whatever I want and put it in a virtualized environment. I hope that makes sense.